Hello friends, this is Brett Blumenthal, and today I am going to talk to you about the 3 biggest lessons I've learned over the course of my watercolor career. There are a lot of things that you can learn over time when you start doing watercolors, and I think if I knew these 3 things earlier on, my watercolors and my art would have gotten a lot better, a lot faster. So I wanted to share these with you today. The first big lesson that I had was that quality of paper is so important. You may have heard me talk about this before, but I cannot emphasize it enough. When you purchase watercolor paper, you always want to make sure that it's 100% cotton and a minimum of 300 GSM weight, or 140 pound. This is going to help you in so many ways. For starters, when you create any wet on wet techniques, you will avoid buckling and potentially minimize it or eliminate it completely. Buckling is something that happens when you apply a lot of water and your paper starts to become all ridgy and bendy and hard to work with. And so you don't want that when you are doing a lot of wet on wet techniques or washes, because you'll find that your water doesn't dry evenly across the page, and instead you'll get puddles and your paint will start to look blotchy. Obviously, because of this, when you have good quality paper, you're going to have cleaner and more even washes. And washes are a technique that I love using, especially in my landscapes. So having the right paper will make your washes look beautiful. And because you don't have the buckling, it'll be a lot easier to control the amount of water on the paper and make sure that it's even across the page. And so any technique where you're using a lot of water, you're going to have much better results. The second lesson that I learned is that bigger isn't always better. When I first started out, I purchased a huge pad of paper. I think it was like 18 by 24, and I had visions of what I was going to do with that. And it became very overwhelming very quickly. And so what I have learned over time is that sometimes smaller is much better. It gives you the ability to take your time and really focus on your technique. When you have a huge canvas, you're focusing on everything at once, and it's sometimes hard to really hone into those fine details or those areas that you want to really get just right. Also, when the canvas is too big, you're going to find that your drying time is very hard to control. So if you do use wet on wet techniques, you're going to find that parts of your page are going to dry faster than other parts, which is going to leave your painting looking very blotchy and a bit of a mess, especially when you're trying to do a wash or something on the entire piece. So I can't urge you enough to start small if you're just starting out. Finally, the third lesson I learned is that you really need to let your paint dry if you are doing anything like glazing or trying to get crisp lines in your painting. So let's say you're creating a mountain scene, and that mountain scene obviously should have a nice crisp line at the peaks of all the mountains. If you don't let your paint dry, you're going to end up having that mountain line look very fuzzy, and that's not necessarily what you want. Another problem with not letting your paint dry is that you tend to get muddy colors. So if you're layering color after color after color and the paper and the paint never dry completely, you're going to be mixing your colors right on the paper instead of getting those really nice vibrant hues. And then also you may have a lot more blooms, and sometimes blooms are really beautiful in pieces of art, but if you don't want blooms in your artwork, then letting your paint and your paper dry completely before going on to your next layer of paint will be instrumental in ensuring that you don't get those blooms. So those are my 3 big lessons. Just to repeat them, 1 is that paper is so important and it's worth spending the extra money on it. 2 is that don't always start big. Bigger is not always better. Go small. And the 3rd is that you need to let that paint dry, especially if you want to do any glazing or layering in your art. I hope these 3 lessons help you, and thanks so much for watching. And as always, please subscribe, like, and comment down below some of your lessons that you've learned over time with watercolors.